You've been on annual leave, as they call it.
Yeah.
Like, that is what you would describe as a career break to other people. So what did you do during your career break? Did you think about your career?
Well, I tell you what, like, you know, you like to get away from the office and take a break from the whole thing. And every time I opened up my social media, Nicola Talent, another clip in your never-ending quest for celebrification.
Am I living with Lucy?
Yes.
Yeah.
I couldn't, honestly,
So
every
you were
time
involved in that yourself?
I
had so many messages from people wondering when you're going on. And is she going to live with you? And somebody said...
That would be a grittier experience,
wouldn't it? Just, I mean, imagine, how would she deal with keeping everything down to that time? Fine.
I'm telling you, it'd be like, you know, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and then, you know, she had a darker, grittier series on Netflix.
And what would you do? Like, what would you do all day with her? Would you sit there and what would you do?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, she was in here with us, of course, wasn't she? And we had the crack. She's great fun.
Yeah, she was. She was
good,
great,
fun.
Yeah.
No, she really is.
But look, the footage of the guy on Talbot Street, I have to, because I said it to the producer.
Fiona.
Yeah, I said, like, if you hired a team of comedy writers and said, like, 5 of them, 5 days to come up with those sort of gems, you couldn't do it.
We have a little look at it.
So, very exciting. Hello! I'm heading into the Sunday World because this weekend I'm living with Nicola Talent, which is very exciting. I'm not on a fashion shoot. I love that you think I am. Love them. Yeah.
Who is it? Can you reveal it?
Nicola Talent.
That means everybody be watching me.
I hope so. Good.
Lucy, you look pretty well. Did you lose? You lost a lot of weight, look.
Really? Is that a compliment? Why was I really big before?
I mean, absolutely. You could not have. No. I mean, would you have been able to pay actors?
I don't think so. Like, it's so. But I mean, that is our life, isn't it?
It is completely and utterly. Yeah. And then there was, of course, more little interactions going down the street. Yeah. I had actually said to, of course, the Dare Productions that make the Living with Lucy show really successful. It's going into its 8th season, I think, next year. Yeah. But I actually had said to them, you know, they were kind of like, you know, what can we do and where can we do? And I was like, you'll probably get something on Talbot Street. Like, to be honest with you, I'd say they thought I was mental.
Yeah.
And I was kind of going, you know, people stop and talk to me on Talbot Street, and I said they've absolutely no question of it, but news of Lucy's arrival will go round like like
they were calling her. Somebody said to me, they walked past and there's Living with Lucy.
They're calling her Living with Lucy.
Yeah, they weren't even calling her Lucy Kennedy.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. No, it always gives.
Yes,
the street.
It does.
But even the guy, he's so funny.
Yeah.
Such a comedian.
Yeah.
But he says at the end of it, Ireland's roughest street, and then he just laughs.
Oh, you literally couldn't make it.
And there was absolutely nothing rough about them.
So anyway, that was disturbing. Every time I opened up, Nicola Talent.
Well, somebody suggested that Lucy could go and bring you shopping. I don't know why. Is that a compliment or an insult or a?
It's more likely a pleasant insult, I would say.
Well, of course, you saw on it that we went down to Corinthians.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably interesting for people to have a look inside Corinthians, what goes on, and chatting to people. And of course, that is part of a larger project we're working on.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, they're rarely out of the news, the wider Hutch family.
Yeah.
Rarely out of the news.
Yeah.
And in actual fact, Derek Delboy Hutch is back in the headlines this week. Now, he would be an older brother of Gerry Hutch, who was murdered in Spain. And we covered a lot of this in our 3-part conversation we did about Gerry Hutch.
Yeah, well, actually, we couldn't go into Delboy Hutch because he was before the courts on this charge. Delboy Hutch has now pleaded guilty to, he's 42 years old, he's pleaded guilty to a long charge, dangerous driving causing serious bodily harm and driving a mechanically propelled vehicle under the influence of an intoxicant. But basically right outside the door here.
I remember it happening.
Yeah.
Do you?
I do remember it happening, because it happened around lunchtime.
And it was just across the road from Connolly Station and where you cross the road to come on to Talbot Street. I think some of our colleagues witnessed it.
They did. They were, because it was around lunchtime. Ukrainian woman, her name is Valentina Linok, 64-year-old. I think she was a Ukrainian refugee. This happened in 2022, probably at the, right in the beginning of, just after the start of the war in Ukraine. And she was crossing the road, and Delboy basically hit her on a motorbike, causing catastrophic injuries. God. I think there was definitely a fear that she wouldn't make it at one stage. I suppose Delboy Hutch is now 42, but really he has spent the last 20 years in one way or another in the newspapers connected with
that lady survived. I remember at the time, kind of, I think it was such a serious accident. We had heard she sort of died at the scene, and then obviously she was taken to hospital.
Very serious injuries suffered. I mean, even the backstory is kind of interesting, because earlier on, Mr. Big had been down in Fairview, and the Gardaí had seen Delboy Hutch driving up towards him on a motorbike, and when they had stopped Mr. Big, and Delboy Hutch had kind of U-turned and left the scene. Now he had no...
And what was the suspicion, that they were meeting?
The suspicion was that they were meeting, and that obviously he didn't want to get stopped, and he drove on.
Or perhaps seen with him?
Or perhaps seen or collated, as they call it, the guards. That was another kind of twist to the story. But it's Delboy Hutch now will be sentenced in December. But he has a very, very extensive criminal history. In fact, he was probably the most notorious of the Hutch nephews, I suppose, initially. Although Gerry Hutch became probably a more significant figure in terms of his activities with the Kinahan cartel. But Delboy was certainly one of the wilder and more reckless nephews.
And the sort of next generation, wasn't he? He was sort of leading that grouping of...
Yeah, he was seen as, I suppose, leading it. He certainly was heavily involved in very serious crime, in particular involved in armed robberies, probably towards the end of that sort of wave of armed robberies. He was suspected of being involved in raids on Securicorps vans as they went around and restocked ATM machines. There was one, he ultimately was sentenced to 16 years in relation to one of those raids. It was a very infamous incident, because one of the raiders, one of Delboy Hutch's associates, was shot dead, a guy called Garrett Malloy, also from around the North Inner City. It was in 2009. I think it was a G45 van, was going down to restock a machine in Lucan. There was a number of raiders there, including Keith Murtagh, who would also a long-term associate of the Hutches. Garrett Malloy, who would have known them growing up, but wasn't regarded as being a key gang member. Malloy and Murtagh took out a sawn-off shotgun, approached the van as they stopped to refill the ATM machine, but they were being under surveillance the whole time by the NSU, and the Gardaí disrupted the raid. It was said that Malloy had then pointed the shotgun at the guards, and the guards had shot him. Shot him dead, basically. And Keith Murtagh was also shot. Now, later on, Keith Murtagh would wrongly be suspected of being involved in the Regency Hotel. It was definitively shown that he hadn't been one of the shooters, but he was a very key Hutch associate. Delboy was arrested. He was in a car at the scene. Another nephew, Garrett Hutch, was also arrested. Garrett Hutch would also be shot dead by Jonathan Keogh and Tossie Fox as part of the feud.
Nicky McConnell.
And Nicky McConnell as well. So it was very much Delboy at that point. That gang were under really one of the top targets for Gardaí.
Was Delboy in prison at the time of the Regency?
Delboy was in prison at the time of the Regency. He ultimately got a 16-year sentence.
And he came under pressure in prison. There was a kind of attempts to, his life was under threat in prison because he was seen as such a significant member of the Hutch organisation, despite the fact that the Kinahan organisation must have known he couldn't possibly have taken part in the Regency because he was behind bars. But there was a kind of a fear that he was going to be stabbed. There was money going into the prison in order to have him and other others attacked?
Oh, there was a very serious attempt on us. There was a couple of attempts on him, but there was one very serious attempt by two brothers, Leon and Jamie Griffin. And we've spoken about Jamie Griffin on this podcast before, how he's become an influencer, speaking about moving away from a life of crime. But it certainly was believed at the time that a €10,000 bounty was put on Delboy Hutch's head in the prison system, and he was probably the person that was most under threat in the whole system at that time. Ultimately, he was moved into what became known as the Hutch wing, I suppose, of Wheatfield Prison. Delboy had been, was very close to his brother Gerry. He also served the sentence was serving a sentence for manslaughter.
Would Gerry Hutch have been younger than 42 if he was alive now, or was he actually the older brother in the family?
Sorry, he actually would have been the older brother. You are correct there. He would have been the older brother. And Delboy would have been, I suppose, certainly the more notorious in that initial stage, I think. Gerry Hutch, but they were very much, very, very, very close. And I suppose that's ultimately why Delboy would have been targeted in prison. Delboy now will...
Why is he going by the name Derek Moore now? Where's that coming from? A lot of those certainly I know of one or two members of the Hutch family that have changed their names by deed poll over the...
I don't know. I mean, I suppose he's entitled to change his name by deed poll, the same as everybody else. And certainly during the Hutchkinnon feud, having the Hutch surname certainly wouldn't have helped in many instances.
Well, if you're looking for a job, maybe.
If you're looking for a job, or maybe social welfare or something.
And was Delboy long out when this incident happened with the Ukrainian lady?
No, he was only out a very short period
just
of time.
A couple of weeks.
Well, I think it was slightly longer than that, but certainly not a long time. And he had...
And has he been in custody ever since?
No, he hasn't been in custody, because if you remember, at one of the most infamous moments of the build-up to the Regency trial, when it emerged that Jonathan Dowdall was going to become a state witness, Delboy and Mago Gately were seen at Jonathan Dowdall's family home and sparked this major Garda alert, and Delboy was arrested.
Would that have been 21?
That was 22, I believe.
Oh, it was 22. It was after this lady had been killed.
It was in her, well, she wasn't killed, but she was in or around the same period of time. But that was, I mean, even those are two infamous incidents, but he also served, he served 6 years in prison for the manslaughter of a guy called Barry Maguire, where, he was a young guy who was basically stabbed to death. So he had serious incidents, and Delboy Hutch even was involved in various other feuding in the North Inner City as well, including clashing with the Alan Ryan and some of Ryan's associates at the time when they were working at the door in the Players' Lounge. That really was part of a whole conflagration of, really part of a whole, sparked a whole series of incidents that ultimately would lead to the real IRA going to war with the Dublin gangs.
Now, there was drugs found in his system at the time of this crash. I think he was certainly arrested by Gardaí on the suspicion of dangerous driving when under the influence of cannabis.
Yeah.
Was there evidence given at all in relation to that as part of the?
No, I mean it was a very brief hearing, as you will hear.
Yeah.
Literally because you just plead guilty. So when it comes back,
when it comes for sentencing, you might hear a little bit more detail.
Yeah, you'll hear more detail about him, but he's looking at a lengthy sentence. It was said when he was arrested, I think the evidence was given at an earlier court hearing, that he told passers-by, because I think there was video footage and everything at the time, not that we'd show it, somebody left in that bad state, but he said he told passers-by he just ran out in front of me, not even realising at that point
it was
that
a woman.
That it was a woman. So he could face up to 10 years for that sentence.
Right.
And likely will face a lengthy prison sentence given his criminal past.
And 42 years of age now. Okay, thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Talent and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.